I've had some really good feedback and some really horrible feedback in my time. Okay? Feedback doesn't mean that you just tell them reflection-ish type of things that you had, or things that you like that they did, or different things like that. For me, feedback is, I always want constructive feedback. It helps to get positive feedback, but constructive feedback is the thing that I think we should focus a little bit more on. Things that you think that they did well as things that you think that they can improve on. Some things that we've kind of bounced around ideas is maybe asking, like, what was the purpose of that activity? Like, why'd you want to do that? Because then you can give, like, if you're supposed to be giving the feedback, maybe start that as a post question, and then once they tell you, you can then say, oh, well, that worked this way, or I don't think that came across, or maybe you could try something like this. Maybe that would have helped you get the outcome that you wanted. But it's focused more on the constructive stuff, because those were the feedbacks that I hated, was when somebody just told me, oh, that was great. Well, what? Like, is that all you're going to tell me? That was. I spent 45 minutes trying to figure out a time that we could meet, and you could come and watch me, and all you're going to tell me was that was great. Like, really? But, so just make sure that you give something substantial, that you leave maybe with a challenge like, hey, try doing something like this. This has worked for me. I'm going to bounce the idea off with you. What do you think? It may work, it may not. Just bounce different ideas back and forth. And it doesn't have to be just a straight one-way conversation of feedback. If it's two ways, then you're both continuing to grow off of each other's feedback.
And I'm just going to add a little different perspective. How many of you have heard of I believe he's French, Martin Buber, French philosopher? Anyone? Okay. Martin Buber. He talks about two relationships. I-it relationship and an I-thou relationship. I-it treats that person as an object. And I-thou it treats them as a person, an agent, if you will, someone who has agency or can choose for him or herself. And so I use this philosophy to give the way I give feedback. And some people don't like it as much because they'll just say, well, just tell me what you want me to do. And for me, it's not about what I want you to do. It's, as a facilitator, I'm trying to empower you to know what you should do better. So this is kind of maybe an alternative to giving feedback. Asking questions, but even before asking questions, I usually like to preface. What I say is, okay, you know yourself best. You know what you were trying to accomplish better than I do. You know your students better than I do, or whatever the context is. You know these things a lot better. I'm an outsider coming in. So I'm going to ask you a lot of questions just to be able to understand, get a feel for what you were trying to accomplish, what your goal was, why you did what you did. So I kind of preface my feedback, I tend to, with that kind of a prefacing remark. And then say, okay, well, what was your objective? What did you want to accomplish? What did you hope the students accomplished, or whatever the setting is? What did you hope your employee, what did you want your employee to be able to accomplish after a training, or whatever the case may be? And then, well, help me understand why you did it this way. Why did you think that this was going to work well in what you did? You used a video clip here. Tell me what you're hoping to accomplish there. Because again, you're treating that person as a person. He or she knows what he or she was trying to accomplish. Because I could come in from the outside and say, you should do it this way. But I'm coming into that context without a frame of reference that he or she, that person has that I don't. Because they've been there, like when someone comes to observe my class, and they haven't been sitting in the entire time, they don't know the students, and they give me direct feedback like that, I usually say, thank you. And it's not like I'm being disrespectful, and sometimes it makes sense to what they said, but sometimes they say it, and the advice they give is out of context, because they don't have the full picture. And so treating someone as an agent allows them to use their own frame of reference. And so Um, whenever I give suggestions, I like to give them like this, to say something like, well, knowing what you know about so-and-so or about your students, would you ever consider doing this? Or would you ever consider doing this? How do you think this might work in this setting? And then they get to decide for themselves based on what they know about themselves and about who they're teaching or working with. And it's a way to empower the other person when it comes to feedback. So that's a little bit different approach. Instead of saying, yeah, you should do this, what about this? Would this work for you? Your teaching style, your personality. And then to go back with what Rob said, I love what he said about walking away with a to-do, an action item. To be able to say, okay, based on what we talked about, what's something that you want to work on for next time? Let them do it. Let them decide. Again, you're treating them as a human being. They know what they want to accomplish. And if they don't come and say, oh, I don't know, well, what if you consider this? Would that be something that would be a good thing? And if they know that you're just throwing out ideas and not trying to passively, aggressively tell them what to do, because that's the fine line. If they know that you're genuine, that you're not being passive aggressive, then it can be a good thing. If they know that you care, it's really the bottom line. Any questions about kind of that alternative approach to feedback? Or comments? Or other ideas related to feedback and giving feedback?
So just to recap, basically in your version of the feedback, you ask them and you try and see things through their lenses, and then you're just offering up suggestions. Is that
Yeah, just trying to understand why they did what they did, how they did what they did, yeah. Just seek to understand.
mm-hmm.
And then, would you ever consider this? Not that you have to use those words, but that's a phrase that I like to use. It's just an alternative. What have been some settings where you have felt comfortable? Maybe it's an oxymoron just to feel comfortable when you're giving or when you're receiving feedback. But what have been some examples of some good feedback sessions where you were given feedback and it was a good experience? Because a lot of times we perceive it as like conflict or potential for conflict. We kind of go in with our hearts closed. It's like, I'm going to go in here, and they know that it's just awkward. It tends to be awkward. Have any of you had any good experiences?
Not necessarily in a professional setting,
Okay.
but like my wife and I, we communicate a lot, and we constantly give each other feedback back and forth. And that's the one place where I feel like I can accept the feedback and truly know that I need to change, kind of a thing, because it's never, you do this, you do that. It's more like, yeah, I don't feel good when you do this, or stuff like that.
And so instead of becoming defensive, it's like, hey, all right, yeah, I need to do that. Because it's easy to become defensive when receiving feedback, if we want to receive it. Yeah, Haley?
Well, yeah, I get super defensive when I get feedback, but that's usually from like certain people. But if I know that like it won't hurt their feelings if I don't follow what they're saying, like I could, because it's a suggestion, but if I know they won't get offended if I don't, then that's when I have a better time for feedback, that I can actually listen to what they have to say.
So if I were to come in and give you feedback like the way I described, would you feel threatened by that? I mean, this is totally abstract. I'm not talking about actually sitting down and doing it, but based on what you've heard?
No, not necessarily. Like, I guess it depends on the problem that you have feedback with. I don't know. It's very circumstantial.
Yeah, very much so. Relational. What's the relationship with that person? Totally. Yeah, I mean, how many withdrawals, how many deposits going back to the bank account? Totally.
Mm-hmm.
So as we give each other feedback online in our discussion, consider consider what Rob said, consider what I said, and about how we give each other feedback. And we'll kind of move forward with that. And I'll try to model how I give feedback just on, and you've probably seen some of the questions that I've asked online. I'll try to model that form of giving feedback. So, any questions or other comments? Okay. We can probably cut that one and start a new